hosting us. The exhibition, Baggage, a 50-year retrospective of the work of Alex Caldiero, is in these rooms. It's a remarkable exhibit. Be sure and come by and see it. It will be up till June, and they're requesting that you make reservations so that you're here in a safe space for the virus. They've been really generous and helpful to us, and we're grateful for that. We thought we weren't going to be able to have a humanities symposium this year because of the virus. But then we found a digital way to do it. You probably came to this live stream through our website, thesonosopher.com. It collects all kinds of works of Alex Caldiero. And then in conjunction with this wonderful exhibition, I think we've got a really good symposium for you. Our guests today are filmmakers, Low and Torben Bernhard. You can find their bios on the events page, so I'm not going to go through those bios. But I want to tell you about how I first met the two of them. Alex and I were teaching a class called Language Most Dangerous of Possessions. And they were two of the probably 10 really remarkable students in that class. There's something magical that happens when professors and students lose the sense that they're professing and learning as students, and when they're together in discussions of material that's interesting to all of them. That happened in that class in some way. And Alex and I came away from that class with all kinds of new insights, and I think the other people in the class did as well. Later, these two were required to do a senior thesis. And all humanities majors, we invite you to look at our humanities program and see if it might be interesting to you. But all humanities majors and all integrated studies students are required to do a senior thesis. Well, these guys just laughed at the idea of required. They had something they wanted to do. And they spent 2 years, I think, they'll talk more about it, making this film. It's not a thesis, and it's not a project done for a grade. It's a most remarkable documentary called The Sonosopher. We haven't mentioned Ken Sanders in these discussions, but I want to mention him and his store, Ken Sanders Rare Books. He financed the production of the DVD of the film. He also has been a host to Alex so many times, and to Andy Hoffman that we had here on Monday with Elit Press. There's something magical that happens when there's a man like Ken Sanders who invites artists and writers, filmmakers into his space and hosts events for them. So we're grateful to Ken for that as well. I think that's what I wanted to say, except I want to read the last paragraph. I wrote an essay for the liner notes of this, and I'll just read that, and then we're going to have a conversation. We're hoping that we'll be able to see comments that you make on your YouTube feed, if we can. We haven't been totally successful with that, but if we can, we'll have time at the end to answer some of your questions. This is not Low's and Bernhard's film about Caldiero. This is performance from beginning to end. Joint performance, collaborative performance, the work of a trio of artists in various media. It's a fantastic marriage of film art and sonosophy that raises the film from documentary to performance, exhibiting charms that will desert neither the sonosopher nor the filmmakers because they are temporal charms, fluid charms, seriously ironic charms.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
First off, I just want to say this is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you got this exhibit.
Me too.
Because I think for us, the major impulse for making the film to begin with was always about our belief in you and your art and wanting other people to see it. So
thank you. That means a lot for me. coming from you.
Yeah, ditto.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time in coming, and I didn't realize there was so much, and so much left out,
Yeah.
and so much, because I just make things.
Yeah.
I was never, but anyway, yeah, such as it is. I hope you like it. Take your time through it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited to spend some time with it.
Yeah, good.
It's been 10 years since we made the movie, so now I can bring my 2 daughters to come see it. To come see the
Yeah.
See? My
And-
goodness.
And
Seems like it was
see,
yesterday they were born.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and see some things with a little bit of distance, 10 years, I can't believe it's been that long. It's been interesting reviewing the film and reviewing some of our time making the film over these last few days, in preparation for this.
Yeah, I don't know whether I was hallucinating, but I like the film all the better.
Nice.
No, with really no ego attached, I watched the film a week ago and thought, I was engaged the whole time and thought it was interesting, and had a distance from it that I didn't feel so much of myself attached to it.
Yeah, good. Good. We have here this thing of the beginner's mind.
Yeah, we have some talking points here we want to get through, and that was something that came to me when thinking about our project early on, something that you brought up to us right away. Can you talk a little bit about what the beginner's mind is, and then maybe Torben and I can
Yeah.
talk about how that
It's not-
affected us?
It's not the ignorant mind. It's not a person who doesn't know. The beginner's mind is someone who has started something. And is just about to understand the whole thing and needs a push towards it. The beginner's mind is already a high achievement because most people bring stuff to things. The beginner, if he's a real beginner, he knows what he wants, she knows what they want, and they're going to put an effort in getting it. So it wasn't like, because I saw, you guys came, we met, and it wasn't like you were vacuum. You weren't coming at it with nothing. You were coming with something. And it's like, listen, I got a seed. I got a seed. What can I do with this seed? And that's where the interactions begin, with that seed. But you've got to have the seed to begin. If you don't have that, well, that's a different trajectory. That's a different quest. But you guys had a seed somewhere. I had a seed, because it was a beginning for me as well. So that's what I mean by the beginner's mind.
Can you talk about where that comes from a little bit and what it should have meant to us?
What should have meant what?
Well, for me, we were inexperienced filmmakers, but you're saying we.
We're not even filmmakers.
Yeah,
at that
we.
point.
I had basically no experience.
Yeah, see, I always saw that as a plus.
Yeah, so we came to you with this idea, and you saw that as an advantage.
Exactly.
But I feel like you shared this idea to us, and for me, what it did was it made me get over any fears that I had, and made me forget. I didn't necessarily need. It gave me permission to experiment, to try different things. Maybe some of it would work, maybe some of it would not work, and so on. So as just the concept of the beginner's mind itself, where does that come from, and what does it mean?
Originally, it's a Zen term, originally, And it's the idea of approaching something, especially if it's, imagine seeing something for the first time, the 100th time.
Right.
There's always that freshness, you know, in that perception.
Okay.
You know, so you come with it always with a certain level of humility and a certain desire, you know. Originally, like I said, it's a Zen term, the beginner's mind, and the way I discovered it first was with my kids. You know, I would observe the way they would paint and the way they draw and the way they write a story. You know, and I go, you know, they're so at one with the doing, with the making. They have no other interests, aesthetic or social or anything. You know, they're not worried about what people are going to think about it. They're not going to try to sell this thing. They have nothing to prove by it. There's the act of making and what you're making become like totally continuum. I won't say that they're one, because they're very different, but there's a continuum. You know, and so that's the way. And I go, how do they do this? Where are they getting this knowledge? That they know when to stop. They even know when a thing is done. They just stop. It's done. You know, and so in observing it over the years, and now I observe it with my grandkids, there's that kind of, I said, that's where I want to go. How do I get there? And you get there by being there. It's like Picasso when he said, how do you know what to paint? By painting. Through the action itself, you begin to make the discovery and the connection. Through the action itself.
Yeah, looking back now, I see how crucial that was. Because it was okay, we didn't necessarily know
Exactly.
where we were headed. It was just kind of gather the footage, experiment with it, collaborate, try different things.
Yeah, I was thinking, you know, when we started and you introduced this concept to us, what it did for me is it made it so I wasn't hiding anything. I think a lot of times in making, people are often hiding what they don't know. And if you're not hiding that, you're not wasting your energy on that. And instead what you're doing is you're playing in the process. And I think then that process is the thing that instructs you. Instead of your ego or your fear, your insecurities being the thing that instructs you throughout. It's not that those things don't still exist. But I think the fact that I wore beginner as a badge certainly made it some of the most creative and process-driven work I've ever done, you know.
Yeah, and along with that, there's the idea, and I think you guys remember, the idea of pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps you centered in that mindset. You're not just going to a place for curiosity or for historical reasons, or I gotta, the Louvre, I got that on my checklist.
Right.
You know, there's the idea of pilgrimage, and some places lend themselves more than others to this voyage that humbles you and that keeps you kind of alive to why you're in a place. You know, for me, for instance, it was in Assisi, you know, even more than Rome. But in Assisi, I've never prayed in that way ever before in my life. You know.
Down in the tomb.
The what?
Down in the tomb.
Down in the tomb of St. Francis, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just this understanding, and it was pilgrimage. And that also gives you an innocence to things. You know, if we're going to go to the ear of Dionysus, we don't have to ask anybody's permission, because this is a holy site. You just go in. And if anybody asks, says, back off, man, I'm on pilgrimage. You don't need anybody's permission, you know, and we would be accosted 2 or 3 times. The Statue of Liberty, I go, no, this is a pilgrimage. I've been doing this, I'm an immigrant. You know, this is not just a statue for me, the Statue of Liberty. This is a holy site. And so that gives you a sort of confidence in doing, and I still think you should have kept that camera on in the Pantheon. When the guy, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to get on the floor and meditate on the holes.
That guy was real aggressive, though, man.
He wasn't
going to get out of
one
that
of the
one.
more aggressive.
Yeah.
I kept telling him,
leaders I've met.
listen, leave me alone. Yeah, but you know, if everybody here starts chanting, you know what it would be? I go, not everybody's gonna be chanting here. Leave me alone. I'm on pilgrimage.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up too. Some of my memories from some of those locations we went to, that we went on pilgrimage to, we filmed and kind of experienced the spaces together a lot, but we would also have interviews and conversations with you pretty in depth that I think certain ideas became clear to you, certain features of your past and your identity came clear to you and helped clarify those things for us, and obviously kind of bonding together as a group.
Yeah.
I think it helped us see you in a way that made sense to us and helped us in the editing in particular decide what to focus on.
Well, it gives you for me, when I'm editing, still to this day, I'm always trying to establish a feeling that I can get back to. You know, there's like a feeling at the moment when I was there that I recognized as being part of that pilgrimage or holy or whatever, and I try to hold on to that, and then I try to edit to that emotion and try to find my way back to it. You know, and I think one of the things about the film for me, outside of the actual film itself, the experience of making it, was that we were doing art studies, and we were talking about art, and we were visiting museums, and we were visiting different sites, and having long conversations about art and craft. And I always feel like that ends up informing whatever the end piece ends up being. And when I mean, of course, it's hard to detach myself from the experiences of actually being in these places. But when I watch the movie, I think about those insights, or the different ways the different things that I took away personally from the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the movie the other night for the first time in about maybe 5 years or so. And that night in Positano came rushing back to me. You know, what an emotional night.
Yeah.
You know, and
This is where we found a church that your great-great-great-grandfather helped to build.
well, it was my my ninth
act, yeah.
cousin. And, you know, it goes back to 1690, 1776, that era there. And I had only heard it as family history, but to walk into it was incredible. And talking about vulnerability, you know, that night would always be very, I can't remember the particulars. You know, what I remember was disarming myself, you know, of any shields, of any armors, and that's one of the reasons why that whole adventure is very important to me. You know, to be raw, you know, and I could not have done it without you. And there was a trust, you know, a trust that is difficult to have, to even experience. And I've always been grateful for that. But it was very painful. There were moments very, very, very painful to be so raw. And it was that conjunction, right? The making of the film, the making of that, being together, you know, and looking into oneself.
It's really interesting. It's just occurring to me right now, too, that that is, in a lot of ways, the thread that goes all the way through the film, that interview.
Yes.
In black and white, the interview, it's almost like a confessional interview
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
That guides, if there's one through line through the film, that's it. You kind of investigating your heart and your past and your art.
And memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, without those pilgrimages, we would have never gotten to that place together. I don't think. It reached a level of intimacy that was important, probably.
Yeah, you know, in outlining the places we had to go to, I really went through an examination of myself in asking myself, what are places that have made me who I am? What are really, and that goes from New York, all those places. Some places I couldn't enter anymore. I was just, remember the Catholic school, I couldn't go in, I tried, I wanted to, but I couldn't go in. You know, it was just way, way too strange, pain, too much, and I, you know, you think you've resolved some things. So it still was valuable, because you think you've resolved some things, and then you're confronted and you go, well, this is not resolved. This is still an issue, you know, and that could be enough. In that particular case, it had to be enough.
Another thing I'm thinking about now is, so we go on this pilgrimage, we gather all of this footage, we have so much material, and we come home and we're trying to manage what do we do with all of this material, but also, so we can talk about how we did that, but we should also talk about the mentor structure that we benefited from as well. I mean, you were a mentor to us as well, as being the subject of the film, but we also had Scott Abbott with Integrated Studies, Scott Carrier, the radio journalist who was teaching at UVU at the time as well,
Trent Harris.
and Trent Harris, the filmmaker. And I think all four of you were really crucial to help us navigate amassing all that material and what do we do with it now.
Yeah, how do you distill 100 hours into 80 minutes, 70 minutes? What is that like? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the challenge. I think, trying to remember how we even went about it on Sonosopher. I think that we knew there were certain things that we knew we wanted, you know, foam and sand. There were certain moments that stood out to us, that there were memories that when the memories aligned with our competency in actually capturing it, we were like, okay, that's a possibility, that's a pillar. And then trying to build, building that, a loose structure around that. But it was always, for us, it was always more of an emotional, it was always going to be more of an emotional arc than a story arc. I think that's why the word documentary in some ways is even a little misleading when it comes to the film, because it does have a documentary aspect to it, but it also sets people up to expect a story from like an ABC story arc, and really, it was always more of modeled off of what it would be like to be at a performance of yours, was what our goal was.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing I think we wanted to capture was what did it feel like to be in a space with you when you're performing. But if you're just filming your performance, when you come back and look at it on the other end, it doesn't feel the same because you're not in the same room, you're not feeling the same emotions, it's not as visceral. So it's really trying to use editing techniques to kind of up the ante and make it feel like it's effective. And so I think that was one of our main goals, was to capture that feeling, capture that performance feeling.
A lot of that was play, It was like, we didn't know what we were doing. My wife taught me how to cut my first clip. She's like, okay, you take this little razor tool and you like this on there. And like, okay, all right, so now we're cooking. And then you're like, and the same thing, same thing goes for the camera, same thing goes for pretty much every aspect of making the movie, writing grants, everything.
Yeah, I think that's very serious play.
Yeah.
But
now-
it is play.
I remember Travis was cutting one scene, the scene with where the subway is passing in New York, and he was cutting some things on top of it, and I think he accidentally missed a frame and something popped out of there, and instead of saying, "Oh, that's a mistake," when he covered that up real quickly, he started to play with it, and all of a sudden it was like, just how can we use the motion of the subway and the motion of these, of this moment, you can speak to it. But.
Yeah, kind of leading to that too, and touching on the idea of mentors. I remember showing, we had captured some of your performance and we were pretty happy with it. Before we were really getting deep into the editing and being like, what do we do with this? Is this just good enough on its own? And I remember showing Scott Carrier one particular performance you can see in the film, Foam and Sand. And we showed it to him and he was really impressed. He's like, yeah, that's good. He's like, but you've just caught a fish. You need to kill the fish and you need to cook it and prepare it. You need to do a lot more.
He also said it's good that Jesus had disciples to write the Bible and he didn't write it himself. Because when you're too close to something, you can't. You have a hard. You ask somebody to tell a story and they tell you what color shirt they were wearing and the most mundane details. There's always some kind of quality to distance that gives you a sense of how to look at it as an outsider. And I think for us, part of it was the pilgrimage and our bond and all the experiences we had also had to be, I don't want to say mitigated, but we had to negotiate with them during the process of editing because you're so close to everything. And so you have to try to gain some distance. And I think having people like Scott watch it, and even earlier on when we were talking about what we thought the structure of the film would be, we talked about all these different philosophies, and he'd always ask us, okay, so how's it going to end? What's the beginning? What's the middle? How's it going to end? And I think that kind of insight from people who have produced dozens and dozens and dozens of stories was invaluable.
Yeah, and later when we did have kind of an assembly cut, a lengthy cut of the film, I remember showing Trent and Scott, and we got to a certain point about halfway through the movie, and they both were like, "Oh, you got it. That's where you need to end." And they said, "Why are you still going on? Just stop there." So that helped. Oh, there's an emotional climax right there. That needs to be the end of the movie. So move that there and rejuggle other scenes
Trent
to
told us
accommodate
the
that.
story of when he was at AMC and his professor was the editor of Citizen Kane, and Trent had edited some kind of project that he was proud of, and he showed it to him, and the editor said, "Oh, that's great. Now just cut all that shit out. Cut all the shit out." And he's like, "What do you mean? I got to cut every single thing." He's like, "There's a frame there. There's 2 frames there. There's 3 frames there." And I think, it was T.S. Eliot said, the burlesque comedian, I'm abnormally fond of that precision which creates movement. And all of a sudden you start to cut those things out, and all of a sudden you see it glide. And then I think you're trying to protect that movement.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, funny you should mention T.S. Eliot. If you look at the manuscript for The Wasteland, after Ezra Pound got through with it, you have The Wasteland. Seriously.
Yeah, it makes
It was
sense.
Ezra Pound that, if you've seen the correction and the emendations, the
No charge, no charge, no charge.
pages. So, yeah, what you keep in is as important as what you keep out, vice versa. Yeah, and many times it's very difficult. I've seen it in putting the show together, in putting the catalog together. All these, and I could tell you something, I was glad that I didn't have to make all those decisions. Just as few as possible, because it's so overwhelming, and everything becomes precious,
Yeah.
and everything becomes meaningful, and somebody, and again, the word trust, and it came up yesterday in the interview with the curators here. It was a great act of trust, and seeing the boundaries of your own knowledge, and your own ego, understanding the boundaries of it. And you're never going to get rid of ego. You just have to have it its place. And so that's that interplay.
Yeah, having that mentorship was really important throughout. I don't think we could have gotten through it all without having experienced mentors.
Oh, definitely.
Or
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't have been as proud of the end product. It was just having a guide, to get to a certain place was really helpful. And it was the whole experience was kind of a really big part of my education too, like the university education. Scott mentioned earlier on, it was the capstone to our thesis, but this project, more than anything in my schooling, I think about in my life all the time. One of the things Scott kind of wanted us to discuss was how the film or how the project affected our lives since then, and to this day, So that's something I've been thinking a lot about. Does anything come to mind for either of you? Maybe start with you, Alex.
I think that I've begun to see my own making process as that I'm not alone. There's the idea of the guardian angel after a while, which is some higher consciousness maybe, that in this very lonely process called making something, that you're not really alone. And I think that was because we were never alone. I've never been with two people like 24 hours a day for a month. 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
sometimes 26. And so that for me was a very important interaction that I think has followed me out of our project, right? And followed me out into my regular making, And it was that camaraderie, and that no man is an island had a different, deeper meaning, And I think that's came right out of, I think the only one I've been so alone with is probably my wife for long periods of time. Seriously. We just did a year and a half, being totally alone all the time. Like today, every time I leave the house, there's like this emptiness already, And as a matter of fact, April 7th, we'll be married 48 years, I think. you know, and that's a long time not to be alone. You know, and so I think that was a direct connection with what we had that month, you know, and the intensities, you know, and every rainbow, every color of the rainbow of emotions and thoughts, and, you know, I think that was very transformative to me, and I carry it with me as a living force. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. I feel the same. I would echo a lot of what you said there, for both of you. It was a very intense experience, but to be working on something and creating something together, it felt really nice, you know. And a lot of the lessons I learned, I sort of keep with me in my creative work today still, but also like life lessons, you know, like I always think about your Sicilian proverbs. I'm serious, like just all the time, almost every day, you know, like there's a
Good.
lot of wisdom in there from.
My grandmother
Yeah.
will be proud of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's so hard to articulate because it runs so deep. I mean, Travis has become one of my closest friends. He's a godfather of my daughter. I'm the godfather of his son. I was in Finland a couple years ago filming, and I kept saying, you know, my mentor always said, and I finally decided, who is this mentor that you keep talking about? And I had to tell him about you and about our, you know, all of our experiences. And I think that's one of the legacies of the film for me, is that the lessons keep feeding into my creative process, but they also keep feeding into my life. I don't know that I was planning on being a filmmaker before it, and now I'm over 10 years into the career, you know, I've made a lot of movies and helped other people make a lot of movies. But it all started with that class and hearing, you know, Travis and I didn't really know each other that well when I approached him to make the documentary. We mostly knew each other because I had started a little international cinema for a bit, and often no one came other than Travis. And so we eat candy and watch Rashomon and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
But the impulse to work on it together was always driven by sensibility. It was always driven by a trust that somebody's seeing what you're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
or they're seeing, or there's enough commonality and there's enough difference that you're on the same train, you know?
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like I keep bringing up the subjects that interest me. If you guys have anything, I have some other stuff, and also
I kind of talked about how the film is different from other documentaries. I mean, we could riff on that a bit, but you know, again, I think that documentaries have inherited a lot of the expectations of narrative film in terms of structure. And in my experience, when people have had a hard time receiving the movie, it's for similar reasons that they have a hard time receiving your performances. There's like a certain structure that they're looking for that is there, but it's not the structure they're expecting. And you know, it's funny because I don't know. I think if I was to make the movie today, I might make some of those wrong choices. I might cater to that. You know, I might structure things in a way that would be less alienating and more inviting from the beginning. That might help you as a subject win people over more quickly and not leave things in some uncertainty. And I just don't. I'm glad I'm not editing it today. You know?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's value in standing by that uncertainty, and really the reason that uncertainty exists is because the process is what instructed the outcome.
You're only young once.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a well-observed point. It's interesting because it does have some like traditional documentary elements in it with interviews and things, and sometimes I feel differently about the balance of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I would say I'm proud of the film still, and the interviews and things I actually have come around to liking, because I like seeing you through other people's eyes a little bit. To explain to some extent some of what you're up to, but also, you know, I think of other interviews that say, you know, I think half of what he's doing is great and the other half is nonsense, you know, and just to bring up a critical question of like, what is really there? And then I think of the lady at the Bowery
The
Club,
raffle?
yeah, who doesn't understand what you're doing at all, and it just
Did you
casts a
really
little
write
bit
that?
of.
What do you write on it?
Yeah.
It just-
Raffle is here. Your work was right about.
It's hard to compete with a raffle.
Yeah, it is hard to compete with a raffle.
And I just think it just casted a little bit of doubt onto what you were up to, and it made us kind of like ask you more penetrating questions. What is Sonosophy all about? And to really double down on getting some of those performative pieces to work in a visceral way when you're watching the film, so that you could walk away from the experience saying, I don't necessarily know what that is, but I know what I felt from it. And
That's why I like to use the word experimental,
yeah.
Yeah.
you know, for lack of a better term, because with an experiment, you know some things, but you're also confronting things you don't know. And somehow you're gonna find out. You know, an experiment is like that.
And there's a kind of a guiding concept that you shared with us as students, and while making the film, when kind of encountering this thing, I don't know what that is. I know that I felt something intense, but I don't know what it is. In some of my favorite of your performances, I feel that. And you shared the idea from John Keats about negative capability, which is this idea of being in uncertainty, being in an intense or scary position, and just being able to experience that without needing to categorize it or
Without irritable reaching.
yeah, without reaching for reason or sense, and just being able to absorb
Living
an
with the
experience.
irritability.
And that concept helped me understand you more. In some
Yeah,
of
good old Keats.
yeah, that was an important
He was
lesson.
what, 24 when he died?
Yeah,
A little older, but not much older.
Yeah,
so that helped shape the film.
so about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, yeah. What would it? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just, is there anything that we?
I guess to kind of close up, we've sort of covered what we feel like the strengths of the film are. I don't know. Do you have any ideas or thoughts of what we can close up on, Scott? No? Okay. So how do you feel like the film helped you understand your work in any way? Like looking back on some of your work, or how it's affected your work moving forward, or just the idea of what a sonosopher is, what a sonosopher does.
You know,
it
there's a
is.
moment, actually, a couple of moments that you captured that were purely in the moment. One of them is the one with the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I went into this mudra kind of meditation right there. And I've always, to this day, I look at it and I go, wow, look at that.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite moments.
Then there's another one when I'm listening to the sound of the bell without ringing it. and I'm hearing the sound, and I don't have to ring the bell anymore. And you captured that without meaning to. I mean, that just happened, and you happened to be there. And then the third one that keeps impacting me is when all this stuff is going on, and all of a sudden, there I am in full regalia with that mask, you know, and an Afghan hat, and a Sardinian mask, and American Indian robe, and all this mixture, you know, and the sounding, the chanting, and back, and it comes out of smoke like that, you know, and it hits me right here, you know, the solar plexus, the heart of the soul in the Sicilian language, right about here, right about there. And those are the scenes that impact me right there. And they were all caught. I think of those three, only that one was with editing, but you were there. You were there. And one of the high points that a film is valuable is that it is witness. It witnesses. I think at the end we talk about that it always remembers. You know, film is an incredible medium. Like, the only thing that comes close is human memory itself. You know, so that's what I would say.
I was thinking about how that bell was from Positano.
Yeah.
You know, from the
See that whole spiel with the. I was asking you about that scene because in one of the monitors, I have 3 monitors there. One of them is playing scenes, night work. The one I did they have a name for it, video selfie. Yeah. And so one of the monitors playing that, about 6 hours of it. The second one is playing all those parts from Syracuse. That scene when I was checking out the strong structure of the room, and you took it with, you know, and I said, no, we gotta be cool, we can't ask.
Yeah, yeah. In the monks' quarters, yeah. Yeah.
About 7 or 8 of them, and I wanted to include those, which is Sonosopher experiments. And then the third monitor is a miscellany of performances from the site, you know, mainly from YouTube. You know, I didn't realize there was that many there. So those are the 3 monitors there. And those experiments were all part of the filmmaking process that we were part of. You know, and each one going into that, you know, in Syracuse, the year of Dionysus, you know, chanting the temple of Concordia in Agrigento, you know, that whole going up and chanting the whole surface, looking at architecture as a score, as a musical score. You know, all of those are part of what you say, what is Sonosophy? Those are these experiments right there in that little monitor. I collected as many as I could find them, and I couldn't find the last ones in the film, 2 of them, that I couldn't find to add to that.
Oh, right.
That's what I was asking you about the other day. Because I do want to add to them to make it complete, you know. So yeah, that was.
I was thinking with the moment with the fingers about how that was one of my big lessons, just documentary craft wise, was that sometimes asking, I don't know if I say it's the wrong question is the right question, but asking the thing that you really want to know that you wouldn't ask usually because you have this excuse for the camera and the mic.
Exactly.
That asking you where you find the time. How's that say?
Yeah.
I don't find.
Time?
You made me go off on a rant.
Yeah, sometimes asking it's not, yeah, in some ways there's an innocence to it. You're asking what you're actually thinking instead of
Yeah.
what you would usually ask.
Come on, Alex, tell me how you really feel
Yeah.
about time.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right.
Thanks for having us. Thanks
Yeah,
to the
you're very
museum for
welcome,
having
and
us.
thank you for
And
coming.
This exhibit is amazing. I think everybody should come check it out.
Yeah, please do. I know I've been having fun checking it out. That's the good thing about not seeing pieces for 40 years, 30 years, 20 years. And having a bad memory. It all helps. Helps me with the movies too.
Yeah.
I says, well, we saw that, my wife tells me. I go, did I like it? Did I enjoy that movie? Yes, you did. Okay. Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.